What's up, everybody? Mark with Coffee&Toys here, and welcome to another Marvel Monday, and I hope you are getting well-deserved rest on this Memorial Day Monday. Today on the channel, we will be reviewing G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, issue number 11. And I gotta tell you, I am really thinking that G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, starts picking up the pace, with the last issue, issue 10. This issue is going to be a fun one and a lot of things to follow today, so let's just jump right into it. But of course, before we jump all into issue 11 today of G.I. Joe Real American Hero, let me tell you where you should be getting your coffee from. That's right, coffeebrandcoffee.com has every coffee you need, from light roast to dark roast, flavored to K-Cups, cool gear, whole bean, ground, you name it, they have it. Make sure you hit them up for all your coffee needs. Use the promo code Coffee&Toys, that's COFFEENTOYS, or use the link down in the description below. Make sure you like this video while you're down there and hit that notification icon, set it to all notifications, and you will never miss a review of G.I. Joe Real American Hero from Marvel Comics. With that being said, now, let's jump on over and review G.I. Joe issue number 11. Okay, I'm going to take a drink of my blueberry cobbler. That is good stuff, by the way. Yes, so this is going to be a big issue as far as places you have to know and things that are going on. So if you see me looking at my notes more than usual, it's trying to simply keep track of the story. This is an excellent story, and without further ado, G.I. Joe issue number 11, A Real American Hero, came out in May of 1983, and once again is written by Larry Hama, penciler Mike Vosberg, inker John DiAgostino, letterer Rick Parker, colorist Christy Scheel, editor Dennis O'Neil, and editor-in-chief Jim Shooter. The issue starts off introducing us to three new G.I. Joes. In the very first panel, we get Doc, Wild Bill, and Snow Job. Wild Bill is about to set the Joes down in the middle of a firefight between G.I. Joe and Cobra, and it's in Alaska, near the Alaskan pipeline that supplies oil to the United States. After popping smoke, the helicopter lands, and the Battle Bear snowmobile, a new vehicle, is deployed, and the new Joes join the fray. Hawk, who is sporting a very nice 5 o'clock shadow, briefs Gung Ho, yet another new member of the G.I. Joe team, and Snowjob saying the G.I. Joe team has been out in the field for about a week. When they essentially were led up to where they are currently at, they came upon this rank and file of Cobra troops and tanks, and they've essentially been in this firefight for quite a while now, and the tanks are trying to leave, and as they are leaving, a small rear guard has been left, and that's essentially got the Joes pinned down so that they cannot follow the Cobra forces. The Cobra team has knocked out their Mobat, and but the Joes have commandeered a Hiss tank, and alongside Snowjob and Rock and Roll, they head after those remaining tanks. Now, while riding with Snowjob, Rock and Roll and Snowjob are bantering back and forth, and Rock and Roll says, "What is up with that crazy nut Marine who's running around bare-chested to show off his tattoo in middle of Alaska?" And Snowjob says, "Well, I hear he has a really pretty sister. Maybe if you're nice to him, he can hook you up." And so that's kind of some fun banter between some of the original Joes and the new Joes. And meanwhile, Doc is trying to take care of Snake Eyes, and he goes to say, "Hey, I need to check your face, your nose, your ears, make sure you're okay." And he goes to take Snake Eyes' mask off, and then quickly gets an Uzi pointed in his face. And Hawk says, "Should have told you, Doc, nobody takes off Snake Eyes' mask. Nobody." So that was pretty fun again. New Joes interacting with the OGs. Back in Springfield, however, Cobra Commander and the Baroness get word of what is happening between the Joe and Cobra forces. And Baroness suggests, "Hey, let's just go nuclear with it. We'll have an accident, and that'll take care of them." Cobra Commander says, "No, the mission's much too important, and I've hired a specialist who can help us." That specialist is shown in the background. You don't ever see his face, but you do see a set of red rockets on one wrist and red grenades on the other. That's right. You know who it is, and so do I, but he is only known as the specialist during this issue. Cobra Commander says, "Baroness, allow me to introduce you to," before being cut off by Baroness herself, and she says, "We've already met." Cobra Commander is very shocked by hearing this. Back in Alaska, Snowjob is watching the Cobra troops via binoculars at another large building down the pipeline. They see it's a pumping station, and it's known as Pumping Station 1. And please remember that, because there's going to be a lot of locales that we're going to jump through in this review. Pump Station 1, and after alerting Hawk, they see the Cobra troops unloading lots of stainless steel containers off the HISS tank. After unloading, one of the tanks wind up leaving with some of their troops and leave a few troops remaining. Rock and Roll suggests that they split up. Some of them secure Pump Station 1, and the rest of them follow the tank. And Gung Ho suggests that all the forces there with them should just take care of Pump Station 1 and then move on pursuing the tanks. Snake Eyes and General Hawk agree with Gung Ho, and with that said, they spring into action. Now, inside this station, there's a number of individuals in hazmat suits pouring the contents of these steel containers into the pipeline. Some are even saying they'd rather be dealing with this poison or whatnot, the substance, rather than dealing with the specialist who had just been parachuted in by Cobra Commander. Just then, the Joes break down the door and attack and capture a Cobra trooper who informs them, "Hey, too late. This is a highly deadly substance, and you will be dead in a matter of 6 hours." Doc radios Joe HQ and says, "We need the antidote," but the trooper just laughs and says, "This is a new strain. There is no cure, other than the one that's being held on to by the specialist." Suddenly, the building is rocked by mortar fire from an RPG that blows up the HISS tank that the Joes had previously commandeered. They scramble to the Battle Bear because the Battle Bear is the only thing they have left that can get them anywhere and radio back to Hawk. And Hawk draws up plans, meanwhile, saying Snake Eyes, Snowjob, and Doc need to continue the mission from the Pump Station 1, and Rock and Roll is going to lay down cover fire so that they can get out with the Battle Bear and continue to move down the pipeline. And not only when they finally wait for the RPG, the RPG has just been unloading on them. So as it's reloading, the RPG trooper's reloading, the Battle Bear breaks out, and Snake Eyes with Snowjob and Doc, as they pass, Snake Eyes commandeers the actual RPG off of the RPG trooper. So that was pretty impressive. Only Snake Eyes could do that, I guess. Back at the rear landing zone, so way far away from Pump Station 1, Scarlet's communicating with Hawk, saying that they are going to bring in Airborne. That's right, we got another new G.I. Joe, and Zap to help out. We go back to Pump Station 1. Snake Eyes, Doc, Snowjob have left, and Scarlet, back at the landing zone, is still communicating now with General Flag, saying, "Hey, we need more troops, and we need quarantine for the Joes that are infected." Flag okays the additional G.I. Joes. He denies the quarantine because he doesn't have enough to do both. So the Joes are going to stay, that are infected, are going to stay at Pump Station 1, and they just can't leave, with the exception of Snake Eyes, Snowjob, and Doc. Back to the three Joes that are on the Battle Bear. They make it further up the pipeline to a nuclear power plant. So there's roughly 50 miles between every one of these locations, just to also keep you aware. So they're at this nuclear power plant, and they're greeted by a woozy employee that basically says, "Hey, Cobra is just here. They beat us up. They stole some plutonium, and it's enough to make a nuclear warhead." The Joes then take off and go further down the pipeline with this new information, and they are soon attacked by Cobras on gliders. Yes, you're starting to see all these vehicles and all these new Joes because Hasbro. Remember that. So just then, however, Wild Bill shows up with a small group of Joes in their own gliders, and they are led by Airborne. And for some reason, Airborne is drawn looking like Grand Slam. That seems to be what they've been making that mistake a lot. I don't know if it was an actual mistake, but he's drawn like Grand Slam. Between Airborne and Snake Eyes, who still has the RPG, they dispatch the Cobra gliders. Back at Pump Station 1, the other Joe helicopter is about to come in and assist when the remaining Cobra troops begin lining up their surface-to-air missile that they have to take it down. Gung Ho has had enough of this. Remember, he's one of the infected ones at Pump Station 1. And he basically pulls like the Han Solo in the Death Star and charges out at the group of Cobra troopers that have the surface-to-air missile they're setting up, and proceeds to beat them with his gun. That's right, he doesn't shoot them, he actually just beats them with his gun. It's insane. Absolutely nuts. So now we go to Pump Station 2. So if I was going to draw you a map, I'd say you have rear landing zone. That's the original location. You have Pump Station 1. 50 miles later, you have nuclear power plant. 50 miles after that, you have Pump Station 2. So Wild Bill and Zap have now caught up and are talking to the station's crew at Pump Station 2, who say, hey, we have turned off we've managed to get the oil flow cut off to keep the substance from the deadly toxin from moving down the pipeline. And we are going to put in this probe that's going to go in there and kind of check out the pipeline, make sure everything's okay. Moving, further down the pipeline. So that's all good and well. We go, at the same time, the specialist is communicating with Cobra Commander saying, hey, everything's going according to plan as it's been devised. We go back to Pump Station 1. The Cobra troops have been defeated, and the additional G.I. Joes that were also sent in, these are just some green shirts, have shown up, and Hawk dresses down the Cobra troopers, and basically Rock and Roll gives props to Gung Ho for doing his crazy thing where he beat him down with his gun. And he says, hey, say if Snake Eyes gets back with the antidote and we don't drop dead of whatever plague we've gotten, how about we go out for a little celebration, maybe you, me, and your sister? And Gung Ho, visibly agitated by this statement, says, I think I might break your face because my sister, she'd be 9 years old. And so that's the bite that's going to come into this a little later. So, sweeping back to Pump Station number 2, Wild Bill is watching the hazmat team put the probe into the pipeline to check the radiation levels, while outside Snake Eyes, Doc, and Snow Job show up on the Battle Bear after leaving the nuclear power plant. The teams notice that there's tank tracks going into a side building, but there's only one set, and they quickly realize that's got to be that HISS tank. So why are the tracks going in but nothing's ever coming out? That means Cobra is at Pump Station 2. And we quickly realize as the crew breaks in, knocking the door down, Wild Bill and Zap are both caught off guard, like, what are you guys doing? And the hazmat suit guys, quickly we find out, are actually Cobra troops. And they basically pull out their guns and say, you guys are dead men. And Wild Bill says, hardly pardon. And, does the old with his pistol and eliminates the hazmat troops. Zap and Wild Bill check out the situation. Everything's normal. And sorry, I lost my notes. The specialist actually does then show up out of the shadows. And I lost my... also, he states that the toxin... Oh, sorry. So the specialist basically comes up and says, the toxin was a ruse to get you guys not to follow us to what we're doing. And the stuff that we've been putting into here is actually the plutonium that we're going to pick up at Pump Station 3. Yes, Pump Station 3. And we just couldn't have you all following us, and so we devised this ruse. And Gung-Ho's like, or I'm sorry, Doc's like, so what do you mean it never was real? The plague or whatever? And he goes, oh no, it was definitely real. And I do have the only antidote right here in my hand. And he reveals from the shadows that he has it. But just then, Doc sneaks in and throws a snowball at Destro's hand, knocking the antidote out of his hand, and then immediately tackles Destro. I've been trying to call him the specialist, but come on, we know it's Destro. We never see his face, though. So they're brawling in the shadows, and the remaining Joes start shooting into the shadows, but then they have to stop because Doc gets thrown back at him, and we see Destro leaving. And as he's leaving, he jumps in his tank, the one that was in the... I'm sorry, it was not the one in the shed. He jumps in another vehicle, which I don't have. I have a big, long thing of text right here. Let's see. He winds up taking out the Battle Bear with his wrist rocket, as he's leaving. And then he goes to take out Wild Bill's helicopter with his other rocket, and it winds up unfortunately being a dud, which was kind of funny considering Destro is supposed to be part of Mars Industries, who don't have their weapons are supposed to be infallible. But yeah, so it just bounces off Wild Bill's helicopter and falls on the ground, and Destro gets away. Meanwhile, Snake Eyes, having went to investigate the HISS tank that was in the shed, realizes, oh, it's rigged to explode, barely gets away with his life as it explodes. So the G.I. Joe team essentially only has the Battle Bear's been destroyed, the HISS tank's been destroyed, but we do have Wild Bill's helicopter. So at Pump Station 3, a helicopter is showing up, and it's a G.I. Joe helicopter. And the Cobra forces at Pump Station 3 with the plutonium say, don't shoot at it, it's probably the Specialist, and we've got him outgunned anyway. So, as the helicopter lands, Doc gets out. Doc looks at the Cobra troops and says, it's over, guys. We managed to secure the antidote from the Specialist, which they did during the brawl. I forgot to mention Doc managed to get the antidote. And he says, we turned on the pipelines, which brought the contamination on. It's now here in Pump Station 3. And essentially, you guys trade us the plutonium, we give you the antidote, and you guys can leave, and we'll just pretend like we never saw you. So he tries to cut a deal with these Cobra troops. And basically, Wild Bill remarks in the next panel that, wow, they made up their minds real quick, didn't they, Pard? And you see the Cobra troops leaving in their helicopter. And the Joes have successfully thwarted this plan, it seems. But we still have to deal with the plague or whatever substance this is that's deadly to the G.I. Joes. Back at the base camp, Doc gets everyone lined up, and he's giving them shots with the real antidote. And he basically says, I bluffed at Pump Station 3. I told the Cobra troops what was going on, but in reality, it was just what I gave them was just a tetanus booster, so they never have to worry about stepping on a rusty nail for another 7 years. And we never turned the pipe lighting back on. So we isolated the deadly substance. We've got the antidote. We'll get it cleaned up. We'll get the pipeline flowing again. He jokes that he might have went against his doctor's oath by lying to his patients, or as he says, his patients. Because, he just didn't actually, they were never infected. He never gave them that antidote. And we talking about, Rock and Roll says, talking about lying, I got a bone to pick with you. And he's talking to Snow Job. He says, I almost got beat up by Gung Ho because you said he had a pretty sister who was a model. And Snow Job says, well, she is a model. She's a child model. And he says, I was really going to carry this joke on further. I was going to make you give me $20 and get you to really build into this and then, finally reveal at the end. But, hey, it is what it is. But I'm sure she would really like to go out to a soda fountain and maybe get a double-dipped ice cream soda with you sometime. And, everybody starts chuckling and the issue ends. And Snow Job says, that's why they call me Snow Job. Because he pulled a snow job on Rock and Roll. So that ends our issue. I'm sorry if it was a little bit all over the place, but this issue, just to kind of sum it up, was a fantastic issue. There was a lot going on. I actually read this issue 4 times to make sure I was trying, and I still messed up telling you the review. So much was going on. So many new G.I. Joes characters and vehicles introduced in this issue. So what's fascinating is it was May of 1983, and Hasbro obviously had the plan to say, hey, we got to get these new G.I. Joe toys to kids' hands. So, Airborne, Gung Ho, Doc, Wild Bill, Snow Job. That was 5 new Joes that came out in 83. And, we got the Battle Bear, that was Snow Job's. We got the I don't know if they actually called it the Dragonfly in this, but that's what Wild Bill was flying. And, the HISS tank. There was a lot of stuff going on in this issue, and they did a lot of cutting back and forth throughout the panels, and hopefully you'll see that on some of the images I've put up in the video. Fantastic issue, a lot to follow, but I really enjoyed it, and I feel like on this issue, G.I. Joe, the comic, really started getting its stride. And I think, truth be told, I've actually read ahead a few more issues because I've just been fully invested in it. That being said, next week with Marvel Monday, well, first of all, make sure you like this video. Really helps out the channel, lets me know you like what I'm doing. Make sure you hit the subscription button down below while you're at it. Next week, we will be starting a long story that it goes at least another 3 or 4 issues. So I don't know how I'm going to break that up yet. If you have a suggestion, drop in the comments below. This is going to be a long story. So next week's Marvel Monday will be the beginning of a long G.I. Joe versus Cobra story. I hope you guys like next week's. I hope you liked this week's. And with that being said, I'm Mark. You've been watching Coffee with Toys. And I'll see you later.
Let's go.